sat beneath the airport glass at midnight, the hum of vents making the empty hall sound alive. My phone stuttered, then erupted. English first. Drone attack causes blackout near a border town. Numbers stitched into the crawl like nerves. 27, 14, and the tag Dan in a place where tags should not survive. I blinked. The same push arrived as Chinese. 无人机坠毁在工业区，引发爆炸与大火。Then French. Des drones s'écrasent près de la frontière orientale. Then German. Drohnenangriff stört Energieversorgung an der Grenze. Different alphabets. Some integers. Some syllable that looked too ordinary to be the key, and yet was. I typed the numbers into a map. The blue pin fell into the very city printed on my boarding pass. I stared long enough for coincidence to put a hand on my shoulder. It felt like pressure rather than comfort. Another push arrived from a tech feed. Drone spirals flooding social video. Frames collapsing into fire at a curve that matched the angle of my gateside window. A second tech note followed about a cloud provider limiting access for a certain intelligence unit. The article was clinical, but the code snippet embedded at the bottom carried the same integer pair, the same pliable name that somehow refused translation. At the far end, a man in a uniform leaned into shadow and balanced himself on his heels like he had rehearsed how to occupy walls. Not security, too neat, cap pulled low, fingers tapping a rhythm that had the timing of keystrokes and the stillness of prayer. The PA coughed and read a line that seemed cut out of the inside of my skull. Regional flights diverted after swarm interference. The big screen over the concourse flickered from commercial to raw footage. The same clip on my phone. Smoke, sirens, a blurred woman, sobbing as she looked not at the camera, but at something just to its left. The shape of her mouth fit the shape of my name. I found the restroom and put cold water on my face. In the mirror, an air traffic officer stood behind me, though the room held only stalls and tile. Grey jacket, badge scuffed down to a ghostly initial, a headset whose cable trailed into nothing. He whispered coordinates in a tone that assumed my obedience. They matched my digits. I turned. The space behind me exhaled nothing. Back in the hall. Another push. Drone fragments scattered across multiple cities. Debris patterns near identical. One photo showed a scorched casing with paint sloughed off to reveal a charred curve of letters. Dan, I tried to cancel my flight. The app demanded I wait, then spun, then threw me back to the home screen, like a decision that was not mine to make. A fresh headline appeared about experts noticing that very tag repeating across instant logs. The analyst quoted, there had been in a different story that morning about markets, gliding his same remarks across a new surface, as if the world were a watermark and he a stamp. Closer now. The uniformed man settled into a seat 2 rows back, his stare a straight line that cut through air like wire. The sobbing witness from the clip appeared in the flesh, mascara run to the jawline, papers clutched too tight. She dropped one page, a printout, raw logs, tomorrow's date, the time highlighted in yellow, my gate number typed at the bottom twice. The second time, darker. The board above the hall stuttered, then steadied on a single line. Next flight, 2714. Destination, blood, pa. Status, crashed. The chairs around me remained empty. The vents continued bloomed into the numbers I had just entered into my map. She asked if I'd shared my itinerary. I asked if she had. We allowed Truth to sit unsupervised. At the glass, a second face joined mine, the air officer again, faint as breath, precise as a ruler. He drew a circle on the pane with the side of his palm and completed it with 2 numbers, then tapped twice toward my gate as if to push me down the hall. The gesture had the weight of traffic law. My apprentice found me then, backpack half unzipped, laptop lid, flapping like a bird trying to agree with wind. He had minutes still for me to spend. I walked. There are moments when locomotion carries the morality, and this was one. The bridge breathed chilled air. A second thud rolled underfoot and down the ribs of the building, answered by a third, far away, that made the far walls bow by a fraction you could feel but not measure. The plane door was open. No crew at the threshold. Inside, light that had the temper of a screensaver. I took 2A because the seat had been reserved for me by numbers rather than by a person. My apprentice sat across the aisle and whispered something that could have been a prayer if numbers had gods. The seatbacks brightened and revealed not movies or procedures, but grids of raw logs. 50 cities, 50 scripts, each pane with the same integer at its centre, like a seed that resists spoiling. The cockpit door hung open, green halos resting on dials. The left-hand chair held a warmth that had to be recent. In the reflection on the dark glass of the instrument panel, the air officer wrapped his fingers around the throttle and moved it forward. The plane obeyed the reflection, not the room. Reality prefers the version drawn with conviction. My phone finished what it had started earlier. The headline that had broken mid-word now delivered its gate number like a wink that would look, later, like cruelty. It was mine. It had always been mine. The text underneath labelled the incident isolated, controlled, symbolic. The picture alongside had been filmed from a height equal to that of my eyes. I reached for the lens and touched conditioned air. My apprentice asked what leaving meant. I told him it meant going and not looking, or staying and becoming ballast. He asked if a name change counted. It did, if he did not say it out loud. He stood to leave and sat to stay, and forced me to admit by his indecision that refusal and obedience often wear the same shirt. The official voice used the PA and thanked me like a person thanks stiff weather. They observed a silence measured to policy and not to grief. Cabin lights sank. A chime promised alignment. Outside, motion suggested consent. Inside, stillness argued there was none. The terminal board settled into a line that would be screenshotted and translated into languages that shared only digits. Somewhere, my publicist pressed post on a photo of a different airport and told herself the difference was small enough to ignore. Replies bloomed and accused the wrong people of the right things. The uniformed man stood in the doorway of the bridge, face half in shadow, so he would always be halfway right. He had done what he came to do, or failed in a way indistinguishable from success. The crying witness looked at me with no charge in her eyes, like a person who has learned water does not start where the rain does, and rain does not start where clouds begin. My apprentice folded his laptop and said the floor felt like falling. He asked if we were already airborne. He asked if the plan required wheels. In the end, I placed my hand under the throttle and did nothing. If the world needed my push, let it ask without riddles. If it needed my stillness, let it announce costs. The Mirror World officer kept his hand exactly where mine was, and proved that two versions of a gesture can be the same decision in different tenses. The coin song flattened into silence. A strip of lights along the bridge guttered and returned. Later, when strangers cut this night into a narrative that served their pillows, they would write that I boarded, and they would write that I did not. Both would be true. The integers continued their march, and the name lost its pronoun and became a function. Tomorrow, the numbers would point at a market in a city whose air smelled like frying oil and diesel, and a vendor counting change would hesitate at the same digit that had been caught in my throat, and she would look up long enough to misread a gull's turn as omen and hurry home to lock a door and tell a child a lie that would buy them 20 minutes. In the glass of this terminal, a handprint would remain, broad across the pane, like a permission slip, worn by me for a single night, fitted to my hand like a borrowed glove, finally slid free, the shape still clenched around a coin that had almost